Good morning, students. Today we will deal with part 2nd of your first flight book, Two Stories About Flying. In part 1, we have studied his first flight, that was about a bird, how that bird was capable to fly in the vast sky. Now the second part of the same chapter is the black aeroplane for 10th standard. Let's discuss what kind of flight is described in this chapter. The black aeroplane. The moon was coming up in the east behind me. So the story begins with the idea that the moon was coming up in the east behind me. Behind me, it means that the narrator or the protagonist of the story is moving towards west and the moon was coming up in the east behind him. So the direction of the narrator is towards west. And stars were shining in the clear sky above me. And the stars are shining, it means there were no clouds, the sky was clear. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I was happy to alone high up above the sleeping countryside. From here we get to know the idea that this narrator is in the plane and he is flying something. He is in the sky, and what is that we'll get to know later. And what he is saying I am happy to be alone high up. Alone high up means in the sky above the sleeping countryside. It means it was the time of night and the country was sleeping. So he was flying above the sleeping countryside. I was flying my old Dakota aeroplane. So as I told, he was flying an aeroplane and he was in the sky, and the sky was exactly clear and he was moving towards west, because he told us in the first sentence that the moon was behind him in the east. So he is flying his aeroplane, Dakota aeroplane. This is the name of name of that aeroplane, or we can say that the brand type of aeroplane. And what he was doing over France back to England. He was flying from France and going towards England. So he was going to England. I was dreaming of my holiday and looking forward to being with my family. So his family is living in England, and from France he was flying towards there, and he was imagining a good holiday with his family. I looked at my watch, 1:30 in the morning. So what was the time? It was 1:30 in the morning. So night, you can say that. I should call Paris control soon, I thought, as I looked down past the nose of aeroplane. Nose of aeroplane. Now what is nose of aeroplane? The front part from where the pilot can see down. The pilot is sitting. That is the nose of aeroplane. So what he decided? He decided that I should call the Paris control. Why he did so? Because whenever you pass any country, you have to report the location of your aeroplane. So as he was going towards England, now he has to report the Paris control room. I saw the lights of a big city in front of me. I switched on the radio and said, Paris control, Dakota DS-088 here. Can you hear me? I am on my way to England, over. So this is the message that he conveyed to the Paris control room, that this Dakota DS-088 is the number of that aeroplane. Can you hear me? I am going towards England. So he told about the location. The voice from the radio answered me immediately. DS-088, I can hear you. You ought to turn 12 degree west now. DS-088 over. So they told they told the location, and they asked him to turn towards 12 degree in the west. So this is something, the direction that the way the aeroplane is used to fly. I checked the map and compass, switched over to my second and last fuel tank. So two fuel tanks are there in the plane. One was over and he switched towards the second. So there is only one full fuel tank was there. And turned the Dakota 12 degree west towards England. As he was guided, he turned the Dakota aeroplane. I'll be in time for breakfast, I thought, a good big English breakfast. Big English breakfast means the breakfast in English style, England. Everything was going well. It was a easy flight. Paris was about 150 kilometers behind me when I saw the clouds, storm clouds. Now what was the problem occurred here, student? Listen, everything was good, the sky was clear, but when he moved, when he left Paris 150 kilometers behind, it means 150 kilometer he traveled up to now, storm clouds were there and they were huge. They looked like black mountains standing in front of me across the sky. For the aeroplane, what is the biggest problem? Biggest problem is the storm or clouds. The sky was not clear at that time. I knew I couldn't fly up and over them, and I didn't have enough fuel to fly around them to the north or south. Now, next problem, neither he can fly in those black stormy clouds, and neither he was having fuel, that much fuel to come back. I ought to go back to Paris, I thought, but I wanted to get home. I wanted that breakfast. So one more option he was having, that he should go back to Paris, because if he choose the long distance, he changed the directions, that much fuel he is not having in that tank. So he decided to go to Paris. But what he wanted to go home. He wanted to take breakfast with his family. I'll take the risk, I thought. Now what he decided that I will take the risk. Now student, question can be arise from here. I'll take the risk. What kind of risk it was? What was that? And flew that old Dakota straight into the storm. He wanted to see his family. He wanted to go England. He don't want to go back to Paris. So he took the risk. What was the risk? To fly the aeroplane in the stormy clouds. Inside the cloud, everything was suddenly black. It was impossible to see anything outside the aeroplane. The old aeroplane jumped and twisted in the air. So this is a very horrible situation there. The aeroplane is old one, old Dakota, as he mentioned earlier also, and the plane started jumped and twisted in the air because of the black stormy clouds. He was not able to see anything, and the balance was not properly working. I looked at the compass. I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, what was the next problem? Listen, students, the only way the plane can fly is having the idea of directions. And how direction is seen in the plane? Through compass. So, he couldn't believe his eyes. The compass were turning round and round and round. It was dead. It means the compass was also not working. Now, this is the most problematic situation there. He's in the clouds and he doesn't know in which direction he should go, and the plane was also twisting. So, what he can do now? It would not work. The other instruments were suddenly dead too. I tried the radio. Now he tried the radio. He tried to contact the control room. Paris control, can you hear me? There was no answer. So every instrument was failed there. So this was the big problem that he was having in that sky. And I couldn't see where I was. I was lost in the storm. Then in the black clouds quite near me, I saw another aeroplane. This is a twist in the story, that he was confused, he was disheartened, he was horrified. And what happened then? He saw another aeroplane near him. It had no lights on its wings. That's why the name of the chapter is Black Aeroplane, because there was no light on its wings. But I could see it flying next to me through the storm. I could see the pilot's face turned towards me. I was very glad to see another person. So he was very happy, a ray of hope. That another plane was a ray of hope for him. He lifted one hand and waved. So he gave some signal to this old Dakota pilot, or the narrator of this story. Follow me, he was saying, follow me. Follow me, he was not saying, he was indicating through gestures, because he lifted one hand and waved. He knows that I am lost. I thought he is trying to help me. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota, so that it would be easier for me to follow him. So he was flying that plane in a way at this direction, and above that in front of that old Dakota, so that he can see him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. What else he could have done? Because there was no fuel. Fuel was very less in the plane, and compass, everything stopped working. So he was following that black aeroplane like an obedient child. After half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. So for 30 minutes, he was following that black aeroplane. Now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota's last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes more. So as I told, he has already switched to the second fuel tank of that plane. So only 5 to 10 more minutes he could fly. I was starting to feel frightened again. Now he was frightened. But then he started to go down, and I followed through the storm. So he was following that black aeroplane, and that black aeroplane started going down. It means that he is landing, he is trying to land somewhere, and that's why he is in the position of going down. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of light in front of me. Two lines. you are having the idea of that. Have you ever seen the runway? Lighting is there so that the pilot can see the runway very properly. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. Now he was happy that finally an airport is there because the fuel was about to finish. I turned to look for my friend in the black aeroplane, but the sky was empty. One more thing happened there, student. When he was out of happiness, he looked at back and he tried to look at the black aeroplane. The black aeroplane was not there. There was nothing. The black aeroplane was gone. I couldn't see it anywhere. Now I landed and was not sorry to walk away from that old Dakota near the control tower. So he landed that old Dakota and he was not sorry. He was happy to leave that Dakota because it was a terrible experience for him. He could have died. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. I wanted to say thank you. So he went to the control room and he asked the lady sitting there that I wanted to know about the another aeroplane that was flying in the sky because that pilot helped me a lot and I wanted to thank that pilot. She looked at me very strangely and then laughed. Another aeroplane? Up there in this storm? So she said, another aeroplane? Are you mad? In this storm, no other aeroplane were flying tonight. Yours was the only one I could see on the radar. So she is saying there was only one aeroplane in the sky that I have noticed from here and it was you only. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So these are some of the questions that left unanswered. So the examiner can ask you, how can you say, according to you, whom has helped the pilot of old Dakota? So here these questions are unanswered. We can have only one idea that his subconscious mind was working. So his subconscious mind was helping, guiding him because it was only his imagination. There was no black aeroplane in the sky. This is the strong determination and the imagination of the pilot of old Dakota which helped him to come out that stormy cloud. So student, this was the very short and sweet story about the experience of old Dakota pilot and the name of this story is Black Aeroplane.